agenda is going to be the COVID-19 mask policy discussion. Board members, y'all had a chance, I hope you've had a chance to look over these attachments. Let's look at let's see, under the, I don't know if we have to look through each one of those, but under the county, state, and federal 2A, isn't that the graphic?
So yeah, I'll help you out a little bit here. What I tried to do is give you some localized data. That first item is the current enrollment within the district of 1,382 students is roughly the enrollment we have. Mr. Campbell's pulling up the HCHI document. What this does is gives you a reflection of how many positive COVID cases are in every school district in the state.
Yep.
We've been monitoring that, and some of our neighbors are in purple, and I believe currently we remain in red. That could very easily.
Why is that red?
Maybe is that right?
Go ahead and let him into the meeting if that's him. Hello?
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 Hey, Ray.
Hey, thanks for calling in, Ray. You'll just, your item will be down at item 2, be discussion topics. We're on our first item of the evening, and so probably 30 minutes or so before we get to the finances, but you can just sit tight. You're in the conference call. So if you don't mind,
No problem, thanks.
mute your phone until we get to that discussion topic, please.
Sure.
Thank you. Kind of in a review, what this does is this allows us to monitor from yellow to orange to red to purple. You know, there's been quite a bit of spread in the Garland County area, and several districts have been in purple since the opening of the school year. We've pretty much been in red. And that represents, I believe, how many cases is that, Mr. Campbell? 50 to
50 to 99.
Is in that range.
Per
So that's a data
10,000.
that's a data point that we monitor. Other data points that we look at as far as information through our point of contact, Kim Harrell at the health clinic, is the Arkansas Department of Health. We also follow the Center for Disease Control recommendations. I have those listed because you know, when you look at the community data on surveying, it's split. This community is about 50-50 wanting to wear a mask or not wanting to wear a mask.
Correct.
So regardless of the direction the board takes, there's going to be about half of the population very concerned with the outcome of the decision. Based on the survey data, and I think we had 866 responses. So to kind of go over the survey data, since you're looking right at it, go ahead and take the lead and review the survey data.
Okay, so we asked these 3 questions. One was for or against a 30-day mask mandate. That's what some schools have put in place to be reviewed every 30 days. You can see there that it's pretty close to 50-50, 52.7 for that policy, 47.3 against. We put some criteria looking at what some other schools were doing. We found in a number of places they were using either the CDC or the Arkansas Department of Health data. If they're in red, then it's mask. If they're in green, it's no mask. So they were doing a red, yellow, green. So we looked at this and just put this in the survey. 15 active cases, students or staff would wear masks for 14 days. At the end of that 14-day period, if we were below the threshold of 15, then we would return to a recommended status. If we were still above the 15 threshold, we would extend that for another 14-day period until whatever point in time we got below that threshold. That one was 50-49. And then just the general question, I do support a mask policy or I don't support a mask policy regardless of the number of active cases. And number of quarantined students. And there we had that I do support some mask policy. They just the implementation of a masking policy. 63% of the public was in favor of that, 36% of the public, 37% of the public was opposed to that. On the staff side of things, those same three questions, you see there that it was 60-40, and 4 that it was 57-43 against, and here some sort of policy 73-27 on the survey results. And that was a 24 or 48-hour period of surveying. We did not collect email addresses, so
Right.
that allowed for anyone to respond and not worry about us tracing down what their response was.
So that was just kind of a general overview of the survey results. You might ask why 15 active cases? That is 1% of the overall staff and student population. So if you take your student population, roughly 200 employees within the district, that gets you close to 1,500. 1%, of course, gets you roughly 15 cases. This is a local decision. So in the context of that, if you feel as though that number is too high, that number could be reduced to 10. One of the recommendations that I kind of shared with you is maybe you take a more conservative approach. We have 10 cases within the district. When you look at our current district data, what we have right now is 8 positive cases in the elementary school, 7 in the middle school, and 5 at the high school. So we have 20 total positive cases today, and that's probably up 5 or so from where it was at. Currently, when you talk to either students, staff members, with a highly recommended environment of wearing a face covering, our best estimate is our participation rate is below 20%. K-12. So
You're saying right now there's less than 20% of the
Total
campus
population
population who are wearing a
wearing
mask?
a mask, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and that's, that's just general observation when you go into a classroom, looking at your employees, the bus ride, all of those elements that exist. When we were in an emergency declaration, I will tell you that last year before the governor instituted the mask mandate statewide, we were prepared to make a recommendation to this board to have a mask mandate. Our reservation has been due to the legislative action that was taken.
Right.
An injunction being placed in the state of Arkansas to indicate is it constitutional or not at the local level to proceed. That injunction allows this local Board of Education to make a decision. And that decision can be maintained locally until the courts wrestle around and figure out whether it is deemed unconstitutional or not.
Correct.
What we're looking out for is the safety and welfare of the student population. The learning loss is something that this Board of Education is very concerned about. And there's 2 things that can keep kids in the classroom. One of them is for a child to be vaccinated, and that is not an opportunity for anyone 11 years of age or under.
Correct.
Our learning this year is on-site and not remote. We are pivoting when kids are quarantined. The other option in our quarantine regulations from the department is if both individuals are wearing a face covering and they come into close contact. So if I'm a positive case and we are in close proximity for 15 minutes within a 24-hour period of time, if we're both wearing a face covering, it does not require our contact tracers to quarantine an individual. I have spoken to some school districts that are using a mask policy, and probably their greatest benefit beyond helping the safety and well-being of students is probably limiting the number of students that are quarantined. We have a community that needs to go to work every day. And probably the number on the right-hand side has the community as much in an uproar as the number on the left-hand side. And that just depends on who you talk to. But I've taken calls on both sides of this, a lot of emails in that regard. And so with that, we currently have
130
roughly 130 kids
and one staff.
and one employee that is trying to teach remotely to some students in the classroom.
Okay.
So with that, I'll
Yeah, I was
turn it
gonna
over
say,
for board discussion.
what I would like to happen, I know there may be some of y'all that would like to speak. What I would like to do is engage my board here in some discussion about our options. And anybody that would like to speak, we will allow you a few minutes to do that after a little bit of board discussion. So I just want to just sort of to gel the idea for the board. We are talking about, do we want to implement a mask policy, and if so, what type? So there are 50-50 in the community, basically. If you talk to people randomly about, do you wear a mask, do you not? So do you get a vaccination, do you not? I know it's a very hot topic. It's very contentious on both sides. But what we have to consider is what to do for our kids that allows them the best opportunity to get their school instruction for the year. Now, some parents have chosen to homeschool or to take their kids out and to do it at home because they just feel like that's a safer option for them. And I think that's wonderful if you can do that, but we have a lot of working parents who can't do that. The number of quarantines is very high. You know, when you look at data from some of our other school districts in Garland County, and really I was just looking at Garland County because that's where we live. You know, Lake Hamilton as of, I think it was updated through Friday. I don't know if it was updated after that. They had fewer kids quarantined than we do. Now they have a mask policy. They have more cases, but they have fewer kids quarantined and staff. Well, we only have one staff quarantined, so that's not really an issue. So the discussion the board needs to have is a mask policy appropriate at some level so that we don't have to quarantine as many children? And we are talking about a mask policy that would be for indoors confined spaces, so buses, classrooms. When they're outdoors playing, you would not have to wear it. And this is according to the CDC. You know, and in conjunction with that, what if you have high school kids who are vaccinated? Are they exempt from the mask mandate? Because CDC says if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine, unless you're symptomatic, obviously. So do we want to implement it? There's a lot of moving pieces to it. Do you lay it down? If you do it, do you just lay it down for everybody, staff included? Because some staff is vaccinated. Do they need to wear a mask also? And I understand the CDC also says that for the best possible scenario with the Delta variant, they advise vaccinated and unvaccinated people to wear a mask indoors or in confined spaces. That's a recommendation. You know, some people make the argument, I'm vaccinated, that's why I did it, so I don't have to wear a mask. You know, we all went through this last year where we wore masks everywhere we went, indoors, outdoors, all the time. Some of us, maybe not all of us. But, but what we want to do is we need to keep kids in school this year because A, they have lost a lot in the last year. We need to keep them here as best we can. So that's my little soapbox introduction, and I would like to, you know, just get some feedback from y'all kind of, do we feel like that implementing a policy would be good if we do it based on Fountain Lake's data, Garland County's data, Arkansas's data, US data? You know, how far down the pipeline do you want to look at data? You know, my personal opinion is the Garland County, Fountain Lake, you know, community, Garland County encompassing lots of folks there, but that seems to me to make the most sense, as opposed to just saying, Arkansas's got a bunch of cases.
No.
Tell me your opinion.
I go off Fountain Lake's data, not Arkansas or even maybe Garland County. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as out of Garland County.
Okay, so we want to, if we do a mask mandate of some sort, a mask policy, does the board feel like looking at Garland County numbers is sufficient? I know there was that link with
I
that.
like what he's got right now with our numbers.
Looking
Yes.
at the cases in the Fountain Lake School District
Right.
versus looking at even the countywide. Because we have.
Y'all know my take on it.
Well, I would also echo that we need to pay attention that our district boundary is very long and narrow, and so we are a border to Benton, and so there's quite a
Right.
bit of Saline County activity and movement from the eastern side of our district that do interact in that regard in the same manner that we have a Garland County component as well. If you recall, initially, we were borderline of a school closure because of a case originally that came out of the Bauxite area of Saline County. And we got a call from the State Department, and of course, all schools closed within a week and a half.
So here's my thing. I'm not necessarily a proponent of wearing masks. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't wear one at work. We're all socially distant. Most of us are vaccinated. So I'm not necessarily a proponent of wearing a mask. But what I am a proponent of is keeping kids in school.
Right.
Because I feel like they have lost so much in the last year that even though it feels like a bribe to me by the CDC, if you wear your mask, you don't have to quarantine. So it's kind of, you know, I
Or
can
if you get
follow.
vaccinated, which is stupid, you don't have to quarantine.
Well, and honestly, to me, there's some mixed messaging there in that they say these things, you don't have to quarantine under these conditions, yet the Delta variant is more transmissible and more, you know, it's just a bigger deal than the regular COVID last year. So to me, the messaging is a little mixed there. So I don't want us to get hung up on the messaging that's coming out. But what I am interested in is, do we think that can keep kids in school, in the classroom, and teachers where they need to be to learn? Whether the mask is as effective as they say, whether the vaccine is effective or not, it's a debate. And there's honestly, you could ask 100 people and probably get 50-50 down the line on any of that, anywhere. So,
I know we've all read studies or read, you know, whatever you read,
right,
of the effectiveness of wearing a mask, right? You have experts that say that it's very effective, and then you have experts that say that it doesn't. So,
right.
I'm kind of the same way. I think you make a personal choice for your child on whether you want them to wear a mask or not, and what you can do to protect your child, right? That's what I would think ideally. But obviously, in looking at the numbers are there. There's no secret that we have active cases.
Yes.
That's rose by 5 from yesterday, and 5 active cases, right? About approximately.
Approximately 5.
And then the number of quarantine kids has gone up pretty significantly since last week.
Yeah.
I want my child to be in school. I feel like we've been in school for 2 years. My child has done anything but regressed really in where she was 2 years ago. I feel like this was the year to kind of get back going, start learning again what she missed in the past 2 years, and move forward. When we were trying to do this from home, there's a lot of stress on both of us, and we didn't get anywhere with the learning. And so for me, I'm with you. I want to do whatever it takes to keep the children in school. And so if 2 kids are wearing a mask, and we can keep, and 1 test positive, but we can keep less people from going home to quarantine, then that's what I would like to see, personally. And I don't wanna look at the big picture, because we're living in our world here, and what's going on here, and the cases are there. Like,
Right.
they're not made up cases.
That makes sense to me, you know,
So-
that what's going on in our community.
So I looked at our COVID cases and our quarantines, and for the kids who are in quarantine, and they're not all in quarantine because of contact here.
Okay.
right? Some of it, a small part of it, particularly last week, was before they had come back to school, they had contact, and then
Okay.
had to quarantine. So
Okay,
of that 129 kids that are in quarantine right now, not the test positives, the ones in quarantine, if we had had a mask policy and the students were wearing a mask, more than 100 of those students in quarantine now would be in school. If we had had the mask policy in place, they would not have had to quarantine if everybody was wearing the mask appropriately. Where those 30 we would have gotten those 30 would have been lunchtime, because they have assigned seats in the cafeteria. They're not going to be wearing masks at lunchtime. You would have had the contact during that period of time, and those folks would have had to go home. But otherwise, it's classroom contact, where if they were wearing masks, we
Okay.
would not be quarantined.
so I have a question, that you just raised a very good question. If everybody comes to school, everybody's wearing a mask, on the bus and the classroom, but you can't eat with a mask on. So you go to the cafeteria, take off your mask, eat your lunch. And somebody the next day tests positive.
So anyone within 6 foot of that person
In the
would
lunchroom
then be going to quarantine.
Is still gonna be going home.
Well, no, not necessarily.
I mean, of the
If
young
you eat- If
children.
you eat military style, you eat in 10 minutes, that's less than 15 minutes, you're not quarantined.
Well, that's true.
But we also require them, because of what the free play is, we kind of minimize the degree of free play, so they do sit the majority of the time, is that correct?
Yes.
Order, right?
So, I mean, you're just not
A
eating
grade level.
food like maybe you did at one point. Because of COVID, we've got restrictions and routines even around lunch.
But, or you're not saying they're limited when they go outside.
I'm telling you, they don't go outside. They take turns going outside. Maybe a grade level goes outside, not both grade levels go outside. So some
But
of
if they're
them will
outside-
still be sitting inside in the cafeteria by each other for the whole lunch period.
But with the whole CDC deal, if they're outside, they can take the mask off.
They're fine outside. I'm just saying that
So why not let them
when
also
you eat
outside?
military style and you get done, you may have to sit there.
No, no, but I'm saying, why
Not
can't
be
you
able
sit
to
them
go
all
outside.
outside?
We could revisit
Right.
that policy.
Where you limit it to
Where you-
one class
where you
going
try-
out at a
right.
time.
We could revisit.
You go to let them eat and get up and go like they used
Right.
to.
Yeah, because that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Pre.
I mean, some of them didn't even sit down and eat, they just rolled out.
Right. Hold that thought just a second. So,
I like what we put here in front of us. We got parameters established with this. I like using local data because that's where we're at, because we might have some anomaly in Garland County from Hot Springs that shouldn't impact what we're doing here.
right,
And, you know, I want to reduce the opportunities for quarantining children. If we don't keep these kids in the classroom, teachers did a great job last year, but we're going to
Absolutely.
lose another year of education. And we've got to try to prevent that. That's my position.
and while these kids are quarantining, are their teachers teaching them still?
Yes.
They're zooming in.
Remotely? They're zooming
in. They have to check in every class.
For
Correct.
Yes.
They're zooming live,
Right.
but what do you do if you have multiple children in a household with one device?
We'll make arrangements, but we send home, we provide one-to-one.
Two devices, okay.
Kindergarten kids going home in quarantine right now are having an iPad put in their backpack on the way out the door.
Okay,
And that's tough to hear. I mean, zooming in, you would think you would get the same result, but you don't get the same result.
right,
No,
just
you
like
don't.
Brian
Same
is
kind of
But
listening
there's
now.
accountability.
Yeah, no, on their part, 100%, for sure.
But you can put this mask policy in place and still blow it at lunchtime. That's what you're saying.
But you're sitting around the
Not
same
to the
number of
same
people,
degree.
right? You're sitting,
Right, you're
it's
right.
limited to
Less
the people that are
people,
sitting
right.
around you, because you're not, aren't they in alphabetical order?
somehow,
Kind of.
somewhere, there would have been 30 out of the 130 that were lunchtime close contacts. The rest of them were in class, no mask.
Okay,
So-
I get what you're saying there. Okay, so, let's give our community members that took the time out of their schedule to come. What I'm gonna ask is that I've got my little stopwatch here. We're gonna limit you to about 3 minutes, okay? So, and you don't have to take 3 minutes. I'm just saying, just in the interest of time, we're not going to go on and on. But I would like to hear from any of you that have comments while you're here. So just, when you do, tell us your name and what age kids you have. And then,
Can I hand something out to you too?
you, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all please bear with me because I'm not a public speaker, I'm just a mom.
That's okay.
Dear school board members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you my thoughts as a parent. My name is Marie Vaughn, and I have 3 minor children who attend Fountain Lake School. 1st grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade. I can appreciate how hard your jobs have been over the last 18 months. If you make COVID regulations too stringent, you can risk upsetting one group of parents, and if you make the regulations too relaxed, you risk upsetting another group of parents. At some point, you have to take a stand for what is right. You have to stand up for parental rights, medical freedom, and bodily autonomy, and take a chance that you will upset people who disagree with you, and that time is now. All decisions concerning our children should always be made by each parent for their child or children on an individual basis, backed by their doctors, their beliefs, their own health status, not on arbitrary guidelines. Schools are not bound to follow these arbitrary guidelines. I asked Arkansas State Senator and lawyer Bob Ballinger what the penalty would be for schools who did not follow these ADH mask recommendations, and he said that it is just guidance, and that the schools can decide to leave the decision in the parents' and individuals' hands, and that there will be no legal repercussions for the school. I'm calling on the school board members to make a decision to stand up for the rights of parents and individuals. Continue to recommend masks as you like, but please do not force mask wearing on your students and staff against their consent for any reason. There is no reason to force other people's children against their consent to wear an ineffective medical device over their faces all day long. School board members are not the individual parents of all the children at the school. School board members are not doctors. Therefore, school board members should not be making that decision. As far as data, here is my personal data. My 5-year-old was not required to wear a mask at Fountain Lake Elementary last school year and was not quarantined once. My 2 oldest children in Fountain Lake Middle School were forced to wear a mask in order to attend in-person school, and they were both quarantined at least on one occasion. Masks do not work at stopping viruses. Pneumonia, RSV, flu, COVID, strep are all respiratory viruses that will not be eradicated by pharmaceuticals or masks. We cannot hide from viruses. Please make a board decision based off of logic and stop following these arbitrary guidelines. On a separate matter, I'd like to address the staff at Fountain Lake promoting pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines to minor children without parental consent. This is unacceptable and goes completely against parental rights. I want you all to know that I've praised and supported this school 100% in the past for their stance at always supporting parental rights. Allowing staff to push their political, religious, and medical views on minor children is not supporting parental rights. As a parent, I'm disappointed that this is being allowed at this school, and I'm asking that you address it at this time and that you have your staff members cease and desist from doing this. As you all should be aware, Arkansas has 3 vaccine exemptions available, and vaccines are not school curriculum, and it is none of the staff members' business what pharmaceutical drugs a student takes or does not take into their bodies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Thank you. Yes, you can.
That's more.
Okay. Would anybody else that's here, would you like to speak?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
do my best.
Yes.
I do better on Facebook Live, but I'm in Facebook jail right now. I know I say in Facebook jail because I posted a doctor's name where they could go and get ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and budesonide, or however you say it, and I got in trouble. So anyway, I was just making a suggestion. That was all. I was not giving medical advice. But my name is Deborah Baker, and I am the Beta Baker's mom. And yes, I'm at 58, I'm a mother, long story. But anyway, I am very fortunate to a certain degree that my child is exempt from wearing masks. But here's the deal, it doesn't mean I can't be an advocate for others. Because there's lots of parents that don't want their kids smothered that's not here. So I would like, if you don't mind, just to read. I got this information, in which y'all may already know this, but I got it from State Representative Mary Bentley.
Okay.
And what this is a study. And I apologize if I get emotional because I love children. And my dad was in the school system for 42 years. He was a superintendent, a principal, and a teacher. So I get where y'all are at right now. I have sympathy for y'all having to make a decision. But this is a group of parents in Gainesville, Florida, concerned about potential harm from masks, submitted 6 face masks to a lab for analysis that their children had wore all day. And this is what the analysis detected: the following, and I can't pronounce these big words, but I'll do my best. 11 alarming, dangerous pathogens on the mask. Now, I don't know if this is kept in or out, but either way, they're still having to suck it in. And I'm sorry, I'm being gross. But, you know, we know kids. They sneeze, they cough, they snot, they drool, and those cloth masks and the paper masks, wearing them all day is nasty. The first is Staphylococcus pneumonia, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, meningitis, sepsis, and I've got 5 that I can hand out to you guys. Gosh, I don't know what this is, but it is Polyphaga. Have no clue what that is. Food poisoning, I guess it's E. coli because it has C-O-L-I. Caused from Lyme disease, diphtheria, Legionnaire's disease, staph infection, severe infections, high morbidity rates, and another type of meningitis and sepsis. Let me make sure that this is not all of them, because that doesn't look like 11. Marie's the one that
You're being handed
this
out
all
for
for me. So anyway, and it says all these were identified, including pathogens that can cause fever, ulcers, acne, yeast infections, strep throat, periodontal disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and more. The face mask studies were new and freshly laundered before wearing, and had been worn 5 to 8 hours, most during in-person schooling by children aged 6 through 11. One was worn by an adult. The t-shirt worn by one of the children at school and unworn masks were tested as controls. No pathogens were found on the controls. Proteins found in the t-shirt, for example, were not pathogenic to humans and are commonly found in hair, skin, and soil. So, I mean, really the bottom line to me is when, and I hope I say this right, when does the fix that we think is the best for our kids outride the, I think what word I'm trying to use, the end result, as in, do we want our kids to wear this mask and have all these diseases coming into their lungs? Or do we want to take the chance on, if they get COVID, the statistics I've been seeing from the frontline doctors, 99.97% recovery rate. I've got facts to back it up, I didn't bring it. but I can give you the America's
No, I've
Frontline
heard that.
Doctors. Yes.
I've heard that.
So, I mean, I know that y'all have a hard decision, but, and I'm all like Marie, I'm for parental rights. And I think y'all kind of got the bucket dropped on y'all, so to speak, when they did the injunction because Senator Trent Garner, had it to where you couldn't mandate masks. And so, I know you've got a hard decision to make, and I know all y'all are parents. So it was, what would you do? I know we always say, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus is the healer. He don't have to worry about it,
And
but
we-
it's like, what would you do? And is my time up?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you got my point.
No.
You got my point.
We thank you for making your comments.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here and, being concerned about our kids, because we are too. And it is a tough decision for us as board members, because our job, I will just say, board members' priority is the education of our students. Keeping kids out of quarantine significantly helps that, if they can stay in the school building. Y'all come on in. Can you hear back there? Okay, because we got a chair front and center if you want it.
Come on, these guys want to speak.
Come on. We'll just let you have the front and center. Okay, I was just gonna ask, do y'all have comments that you want to make, or we'll go to Lindsay? You do want to say?
My name's Chris Howard. I have 3 children here, one in 8th grade and twins in 5th grade.
Okay,
My 8th grader has epilepsy, and under no conditions will she ever wear a mask. Her seizures start by mouth tremors, and so you can't see that.
right.
She can't feel it most of the time. So that won't happen. But even Dr. Fauci said that the masks do little to nothing. It just makes people feel better. And masking our kids is not the feel better, but I don't think that should be done. And with all the numbers that showed up there with our school district being in red, so at the worst case for those numbers, it was less than 1% of all the students. So, I think a little common sense needs to be played in that. And out of that less than 1%, how many are actually sick? And because my kids have all had it, a stuffy nose was the worst that it got. For some people, it's going to be bad. For people that are overweight, it's worse than for those that aren't. Why aren't we talking about let's get our kids healthy? Let's get weight down, obesity down, instead of masking them.
Very valid comments, and I appreciate that, Mr. Howard. And that is part of the dilemma that your school board is facing. Because we are individuals, we have various opinions about it. Just like the vast majority of the community. It is, I won't say unfortunate, but it is a situation where it has been put back down on the school boards to make those calls. And, for better or worse, that's what we're tagged with doing. So that is the debate we're having. And I can assure you that we are parents, and we do come from different viewpoints on the subject, so we're just going to do the best that we can in this situation. And I'm going to ask Lindsay if you have comments you said you want to make.
I do. I don't have any data or sources to back up my opinion of masks other than I do not wear them, and I do not want my children to wear them. And then one thing I noted in the conversation before showing all of the data collected from Fountain Lake, that visually only roughly 20% of student and staff, was that the number said, are wearing masks?
Currently.
Yes.
Okay.
When it's all
If
red.
if all data collected and all reports shows more people are for masks, and you want to hold that to the truth, why are people not wearing masks? Because I voted no. I send my kid to school with no mask. But if I voted yes, my kid would be in a mask. So I found, and I don't know the validity of these surveys, but that you can take that survey more than one time. And I've done it before.
Okay, she's coming clean now.
So, I mean, I don't know how you can, if there's no emails collected, but I mean, these keyboard people can sit there and say, yes, I want masks, 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 but when you come up here and you look, nobody's wearing them. I mean, doesn't that speak for the majority of the community?
Yes, it does.
That's a very valid, to me, I mean, if I was one that voted for a mask, yes, I would be sending my kids to school in a mask. Now, would my kid get out of the car, put it in his pocket and go on about his day? I don't know. I have one that probably would. He's grown now, so I don't have to worry about that. But I have one who probably would have done that, and mom would have never known. But, yeah, valid point. Valid point. You know, I said in the very beginning, I don't know if you were out there in the beginning or not, but, you know, we need to keep kids in school. We need to keep kids from having the learning loss that they did last year. Now, this year's quarantine, correct me if I'm wrong, this year's quarantine is not 14 days like it was, it's 10, unless you go get a test at day 5 and it comes back negative. And then you can return on day 8. And these are calendar days,
Yes.
correct?
24-hour period.
So what you're talking about at,
You can be quarantined on Friday. You can go get a test 5 days from there. Would that
On
be
Wednesday.
Wednesday. You can come back to school on Saturday, so if you got a football game, you can play Saturday.
But you couldn't come back to instruction
School
until the
till
following Monday.
Monday,
so most of these kids are losing
a week.
a week to a week and a half, is that correct?
But,
Is that a fair statement?
right, but as of right now, if you come back on Monday, I'm just speaking, if they come back on Monday and
They sit next to
they
somebody
sit
else.
next to
Cindy.
Cindy that has a mask on, and I don't have one on, and she tests positive,
You have to go home
I
again.
go home for another 8 days.
Right.
Whereas if he
That
had
is
put on a
correct.
mask,
Where if you were wearing a mask,
She goes home.
she goes home, you stay in school. Unless you start showing
Sick at
sick.
all.
Home all the time.
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question. Now, if he's vaccinated and she's wearing a mask, does he still go home?
No.
Okay.
If there is proof of vaccination, and these are, believe me when I say, these are not our rules.
Arbitrary
no,
guidelines.
no.
These
Mom
are
was vaccinated, that's the reason why I was
CDC
wondering.
recommendations. Now, your kids in the middle school, pretty much down, can't get vaccinated. But if you have high school students who have been vaccinated, or staff members who have been vaccinated, and they are not wearing masks, they don't have to go home. Now, according to the CDC, they also say that because the Delta variant is more easily transmissible and more contagious, that it is recommended, even if you're vaccinated, to wear a mask. CDC, just putting that out there because it has to be part of our discussion. Because the school is going to follow CDC. Well, you're going to follow Arkansas Department of Education, which is mirroring pretty closely to the CDC, correctly?
Arkansas Department of Health,
Arkansas Department of Health, but do they mirror the CDC?
for the most part, yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
identical.
So we're going on the Arkansas Department of Health, which means that they have the responsibility to do the contact tracing, to know who's wearing a mask and who's not, and send home the appropriate people, know who's vaccinated, who's not, if they choose to disclose that information.
You know, I think one thing is, in listening to the parental comments, that may be confusing, but, you know, our staff is not trying to coerce the kids. Our kids want to know what the quarantine rules are. And so when they're asking what these quarantine rules are, inevitably, the discussion about vaccine comes up, because if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. And that's a factual statement in the context of the guidelines. I don't know, you know, and our clinic has held, ma'am, our clinic has held vaccination opportunities for the general public intentionally to increase the number of people that have access to vaccine. We have a COVID task force that meets on a weekly basis and has met for a year and a half, and I meet every Monday with them, and we discuss the numbers within the county. And so the obligation of public schools, county government currently has a mask mandate, city government has a mask mandate in Garland County, is being done to intentionally try to not advise the public, but educate the public. And every person can gather information wherever they so choose. But, you know, we'll probably have another vaccine clinic, but it'll still be an individual right as to who wants to get vaccinated.
Correct.
But I think that has to be said, because it's alluding to the fact that we're and here again, we may have a teacher or two, Mr. Campbell, that unbeknownst to us is taking that over the line.
And if they
And
are,
we will take that
That's what we
into
need
advisement.
addressed.
and if it is, then you need to go to them and address it.
And I did,
Okay.
yeah, and that's what we
Okay.
need addressed,
Okay.
yeah.
And
Well,
is
you
it
can go to the
continuing to
teacher.
occur?
Because it's not the case that you said, it's saying, hey, lining them all up as a group and saying, hey, we highly recommend the vaccine. We had family members who died.
And
That's
that's an
inappropriate.
issue that will be, you should take up with the teacher, and if you do not get satisfactory,
Then you go to the principal.
then you go to the principal of that building. And just, you know, continue to discuss your issue up the chain, so to speak, until you get a resolution.
I just wanted y'all as board members to
Yes,
know what's
and I
going on.
appreciate that.
I feel like you should know.
Yes, thank you.
I would highly recommend that you guys, as administrators, take care of that with the teacher instead of, because me going to address that with the teacher that tells my kid that they have to go get the vaccination, it's not going to be pretty.
And I understand, I get it, we do have the chain of command that works, just because that's just the way it works. The chain of command being the parent to the teacher to the principal to the administration after that. So, because a lot of issues can be
And
handled.
I will want to make the statement in public that we will investigate the issue to actually determine what occurred.
Okay, okay.
Because I think in all fairness to an employee, they deserve an investigation,
Sure.
not an accusation.
Well, and I think, so you can talk to Mr. Campbell, or, if you want to share that information,
I've
not
talked to Mr.
publicly.
Campbell about it.
Okay.
I can follow up with Mr. Campbell
And
directly.
we
I've already
won't
talked to him
address
about
those
it.
kind of
I just
things.
wanted y'all to be aware.
Yes, and we don't name names in public session.
No, exactly.
So, yes, but, yes, there could be some follow-up there.
We don't want any retaliation against these children either.
Correct. And so
I'll say that publicly, that we don't want any retaliation against our children.
Okay, and we're being Facebook Live,
Mhm,
so
yeah.
there will be people that are watching us and hearing all of our comments, okay? So the board has to drop back to the board. The board, and Brian, are you still with us?
I am with you.
Okay, good. I'm just checking, you're being really quiet down here, so.
You want to give him an opportunity
Yeah,
to
do
share
you-
his opinion?
Do you have some thoughts or comments, Brian?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, and I'm just gonna openly say, my kids don't wear masks. We're not vaccinated. And that's just our choice, and I believe in everybody having the choice. And as I watch social media today and watch it now, since I'm lucky enough to be quarantined now and at home, I was worried about this because when you sit in our position, and this is kind of the community and the people that spoke, and I'm speaking as a person with most of you on the mask and the vaccine. But our job is to keep kids in school. And unfortunately, we're bound by following these CDC regulations, and we currently, yesterday, Dr. Murphy, if I'm correct, in a 24-hour period of time, we've increased our number of quarantines by roughly 50 kids.
At least?
Yes.
Yeah. So, really, I can appreciate the how many are actually sick and the whole thing with the masks and vaccines, but I'm asking the community to understand that our position is to keep kids in school. And I know lots of, let's just go past the academics, I know lots of parents of athletes. They're going to be sickened when their senior misses their season of some sport because of continual quarantine. And, Ms. Vaughn had some great points, and she gave her personal data about her children, and I can appreciate that. Both of my children are currently quarantined. And I have a daughter that I will openly say cannot really afford to miss in-school instruction. So we are in a very, very, very precarious position here to keep kids in school regardless of our beliefs and fighting parental rights. And I just ask everybody to keep that in mind.
Very good comments, Brian, thank you. And that is the dilemma. That's what we came into here knowing, is that whether we agree or not with the CDC, and whether we agree or not with a vaccine, whether we agree or not on a mask, how do we keep kids in school?
How do we?
Don't adhere to the CDC guidelines.
Huh?
So don't adhere to the CDC guidelines.
You're not legally bound to follow the CDC guidelines.
It changes all the time.
It changes all the
Which it
time, and
does.
this variant's the worst, and it's lesser days.
I mean, you're choosing to follow the guidelines, and that's keeping the kids out of school.
Correct, but, okay, board members, and Lloyd, you're being awful quiet over there. You're probably mulling over your comments. How, like Brian said, his kids, and there are a lot of parents who, for whatever reasons, they work and can't get off work, or they, it's a burden to have kids quarantined at home trying to get schoolwork done. I think you alluded to that, Cindy, when you talked about last year. The only way to keep, here's the bottom line. The only way to keep kids out of quarantine is to put a mask.
No.
That's the only way to keep kids out of quarantine.
No,
Go ahead, Corey.
okay, apparently I haven't done my homework. So we don't have to follow the CDC guidelines, period.
Well, okay, so the governor signed a law that said there could be no mask mandates, period. That the state of Arkansas, you could not mandate a mask. But a judge overrode that temporarily by putting an injunction in place, because the governor asked to have an exemption made so that school boards could make that decision for schools.
After he screwed it up.
They didn't approve that, so a judge stepped in and put in an injunction that said, for now, I'm going to override the governor's law until it can be further discussed and settled. So right now, there is a temporary injunction that says we can mandate masks, just like the city has, just like the county
Yeah, what
has.
he's alluding to.
I'm saying we don't have to follow
Following the guidelines of the CDC. That's what he's
if
alluding
if you're saying,
Those 130 kids that are quarantined,
we don't have to send them home.
the 30 you send home because they've got COVID.
to. I would,
The 100, you don't have to send them home, period?
we have a position called a point of contact that is required in every school district under the pandemic. So every district is required to have a point of contact. Now, it may be perceived that you don't have to follow these guidelines, but there is a point of contact through the Arkansas Department of Health that institutes the quarantine guidelines that we follow. And so we're working with the Arkansas Department of Education, as I indicated earlier. And so it may be perceived that that's the case, but we are required to have a point of contact, and we're required to quarantine people. And we're required to follow those guidelines as we see it as a public entity. I think the choice being made by schools to highly recommending, they're still quarantining, they're not ignoring the guidelines, they're just choosing not to implement a mask policy. And we don't want to confuse the two situations.
Correct.
But I mean, that based on those comments, you know, the Garland County Superintendents, I've not found one yet that as a school district that's going to ignore the CDC guidelines and Department of Health guidelines. And the reality here is, as we look at this situation and pick and choose, ultimately, no school superintendent in this county or in this state wants to inherit the death of a child.
No.
But ultimately, we are talking about a virus that does kill people. And so we all have an opinion as to whether it'll ever, you know, who wants to be the 1%. I don't know. I've had COVID myself, and I fared okay. But the point being is if you choose as a board, as to what I'm hearing, go rogue in the context of following a set of conditional guidelines and choose not to do it, I think the chances of litigation mount much deeper for a Board of Education than they do on the constitutional right of masking. And there has to be a point of understanding as a governing board that you do want to ensure that you're protecting out the well-being and liability of the school district as well. So I would want to further, you know, investigate that with the point of contact. If it was a guideline, it would be you could either not have a point of contact or have one. Since the inception, we've had to have a point of contact to send to the Department of Education.
And if someone tests positive outside of the school, for instance, all those people who were positive when we came back last week, they were already through the Department of Health database, and we received letters from the Department of Health telling us that they were positive.
So when we have a
If you
positive,
test positive.
do you have to
go into
report that to the Arkansas Department of Health, is what you're saying?
The positive test goes into the database.
Gotcha, automatically.
They call you and
And so
Yeah.
either we begin the contact tracing as close as we can to the test positive, or we could wait until the Arkansas Department of Health contacts us and says, begin contact tracing, because we've got to quarantine any probable close contacts. What we identify are probable close contacts. The Arkansas Department of Health then determines if they are actual close contacts.
I have another question for you. Are we still, are we socially distanced in class?
No.
No.
Okay,
Because we do not have a remote option, and we had roughly 50% of our high school, it was virtual last year, so we had a lot of space in the classrooms because most of them didn't come.
Gotcha.
Even elementary, I mean, Grayson's.
We had 15% to 20% that were virtual in the elementary school, and most of them didn't come. I gave you the original number. We've had 34 students choose homeschool. The
right.
rest of them come back. So, you know, much more larger percentage, our enrollment is up because there is not a virtual option. The unfortunate thing is when we looked at this thing in June, we didn't anticipate to be in this situation. None of us did.
Correct.
None of us in this room anticipated we'd be here with this number of accelerating cases. So we don't have a strong virtual option for families, and so our enrollment is up. And we have more kids in the classroom. We're doing the very best we can to spread them out. But some of those classes are not socially distanced, and we do have latitude because there's a 3-foot versus the 6-foot element,
Right.
Mr. Campbell, that we can utilize.
Between children, between
Yes.
adults and children, it still needs to be 6 foot.
Right. Well, okay, so bringing it back to the board, because we are the ones that have to make a decision tonight that says, yes, we will wear masks under these conditions. No, we will not at all. Yes, we will for the whole school year. That's the decision that faces us as a board. And,
Now, the only thing we did not put into this recommendation was a time limit or a time statute, like in 30 days we'll revisit.
Right, so the motion that was put into effect was a motion that monitored the local level of cases When we hit a trigger point of, I think it was 10 cases, we implemented a mask mandate and kept that in place. As soon as our positive cases goes below 10, it's no longer in place. The intentionality that we're holding is to not do this for the entire year. But the better we can own and keep our cases down in our local school and get everyone to participate, get our community to buy in on what we're trying to accomplish for the betterment of student learning. But it would not, anything that we're talking about here tonight is on a shortened time window and is not just going to be for the rest of the school year. So, you know, this would be extended out for 14 days. If the active cases stayed above 10, then it would be extended for another 14 days. But the policy you're designing as a local board authorizes the administration to monitor the number of active cases we have.
A trigger point.
That trigger point institutes the policy. When we have fewer cases than that, we don't have that
And
policy.
we wouldn't have to come back and revisit. Okay.
And the trigger point can be established at any number, whatever the board
At board's
agrees.
discretion.
Correct.
It could be that
Right.
that right now it's 10, you could go back to 15,
but you could go
you could make
25 or
it,
whatever you wanted
make
to.
it 50. The
Whatever.
issue that you run into is what degree of positive spread do you want in the school setting? And we're not experts to answer that question. We're all trying to assume what we can do to best protect the learning environment as a whole. 1% of the population is roughly 15 positive cases. Chris?
Can I say something? I came across the street just to come over here and say something
Cool,
because I'm a teacher
yes.
and I've been here for 13 years and I've been to national conferences and talked to people all over the United States. And I found out that I have more stuff and have been blessed with more things to use for my students in the classroom than most of the United States. I have 4 brand new 3D printers. I have 10 Mac computers. I have 9 iPad Pros. I have 15 iPads. And I have 2 closets full of supplies. And none of those things can be used when kids are quarantined. None of them. I cannot send a 3D printer home with a child and let them use it. I can't teach a tab classroom, which is teaching for artistic behavior, which is letting a student have total control of my classroom and teaching them totally how to be an artist and learn how to be a creative individual, which, by the way, is the #1 thing that Fortune 500 companies look for in the United States. Creativity. That is totally gone because they cannot do the things that they're able to do. And that's not my class only. We have so many enrichment classes and project classes that kids are able to do only on campus. Robotics, medical detectives, you can name many of them, okay? My kids, 5th through 8th grade, had a 65 average probably last year in art. And I guarantee, you probably had one of those kids at some point.
I did.
And the reason your kid was that way, and the only reason they were that way, is because they couldn't turn stuff in. They didn't have the ability. They weren't there to be able to do it. They weren't there to have someone say, hey, remember to turn it in, because they come once a week to my room. If the 5th and 6th grader, she's a 5th grader. I have his daughter in my advisory class. I love his daughter. I love every kid that comes through this building, and I think they need to be on campus, and it's ridiculous to not have a mask mandate if it keeps kids on campus. And it really doesn't matter what anyone's feelings are. If it truly keeps them on campus, and we can be here, and I can get them to do stuff on a 3D printer, which they will never experience anywhere else until you buy one at your house for them, I guess. So, I wear a mask every day, so does my 5th grader, and she doesn't care that the other kids make fun of her. And I don't care when the 8th grade kids or 7th grade kids come up to me and they say you don't have to wear one. I say, are you an expert in it? Is anyone here an expert in it? Okay then, let's trust the experts, okay? And the keyboard warrior thing, I guarantee there's no teacher in here that took that over and over again. So there were 70% of us that wanted to wear it, and so they would probably wear it. But right now, they don't have to, so why would they? Okay, whatever. But if they have to, they will. And if it keeps kids in school, I bet you there's a lot of them that say the same thing that I would. They just can't walk across the street and do it as fast as I can.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that's true, because on the teacher deal, the teachers may not be for wearing masks themselves, but the 70% is coming from teachers that are saying, hey, the kids need to be in school. And
I promise you, I am not an administrator because I don't want to deal with parents. I love dealing with kids. I don't want to deal with adults. I want to deal with the kids, and I want to be in the classroom with them. And if, I mean, like, if this is going to help, why not do it?
And I appreciate your viewpoint. And like, you know, like we've said, you could ask 100 people and you would get 50 responses on both sides of the aisle.
I'm a huge social media guy. I am. I grew up with it. I'm 36. I was born in 1983. I've seen it all. But I teach everyone, you can ask people. I teach people in my building how to use technology. All the time they come to me when they can't get the tech guys.
Yes.
So I get it.
Yes.
But.
And I appreciate your comments. I mean,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming across the street. He saw the cars, came across the street.
But I want the community to know that I mean, like you said, you don't wear a mask. I don't believe the mask work. I don't. The vaccine, if you want the vaccine, get the vaccine. I don't trust them. I'm not going to get them. I'm not going to give them to my kids. But if this is the only way that I can keep kids in school, or like Brian said, yes, I want my kids to make grades, but I want to go watch a football team on Friday nights too. I want to go watch basketball. I want my kids to be at home. I know parents are having to take off work, and I mean, I know a lady that had to take off all week because her kid's quarantined and she didn't get paid for it. And that's unfortunate, and I know we all, can't stay at home.
Right.
But do the masks work? I mean.
And that's not a debate we have to settle,
No.
Because we all have different opinions about
Right.
it, truthfully. We don't have to settle that debate. What we have to do is, how do we keep kids in school? And how do we not get sued in the process,
I don't know that that's gonna be a possibility.
I know, with the way it is.
So it sounds like the number that's the largest is the quarantine, not the positive.
Correct.
So it sounds like we need to address the guidelines for who gets quarantined for how long, because they're the ones that are affected worse than
That's
the kids
correct.
that actually tested
And the way
Well, they're at school the same amount of time, whether they're positive or.
Right, well, I'm just saying there's more of them.
But did
Right.
Mr. Campbell not say that you send off and the state determines who's probable?
We say who's probable.
Except for the ones that got it from out of the community, right?
Right.
There was a
handle
certain
it.
number that got it from outside the community that didn't get it.
That didn't get it in
We
school.
contact trace, and they're classified as probable close contacts based on our contact tracing.
Then the
Then at
health
some point in
department.
time, the health department will reach out to that household and confirm that they were a close contact.
But you go ahead and send them
But
home.
we send them home based on the probable close contact.
Okay.
To go ahead and get the process
Go ahead and
started.
get the process started, because it could be day 8 before you get the phone call from the Department
Right.
of Health.
And we've been instructed since the inception that we're required to do all of the contact tracing in the school setting. There is not a group of people out there hired to come in and follow behind and ask our teachers, our administrators, all of them look at video cameras, talk to teachers, try to track down kids, figure out the movement of kids, and it is something that we're doing the very, very best we can at, and it is not perfect. It's just that, and when we're uncertain, we have to err on the side of caution. We don't err on the side of let's turn our head. We err on the side of caution, and it worked very well last year to keep our positive cases down, but we didn't have the same degree of spread among the student population last year as we're having now. we're having a much,
We think we're having them.
well, I
I mean,
mean,
it's day
we
seven.
got more
we're
kids,
seeing
we got more kids that are
multiple cases
testing
in class.
positive now than what we've had
Yeah.
in the past.
We did not have that.
We didn't have
last
this, and we're seeing some evidence of school spread, where before, if we did have a positive case, it's typically a parent gave it to a kid, something in that
Right.
nature.
And that's still gonna,
Right, so
Be
we'll
the
still
case.
have that element.
you know, board members, Brian, I'm including you, because hope you can still hear us.
I'm here.
Okay, so board members, we really are, we're given two options in a nutshell. Leave things as they are and watch and see what happens. Or implement a mask policy of some sort to reduce the number of kids in quarantine. It's not gonna do anything for the number of positive cases. I mean, those people still gotta go home, but the close contacts would not have to quarantine. So, you know, where do we fall on that? Do we at least agree that we want, for the sake of educating our children, that we need to do something to keep them from quarantining? Short of not following CDC guidelines and setting ourselves up for who knows what.
Yes.
Right, can I suggest that we put the motion on the floor and vote? Do you think that's premature?
Do we,
Okay.
Yes, but I think
Is
that
it-
needs to be amended.
I would
We
like,
can amend it before
Can
we
we
Do
vote
one
on it.
vote
Right.
of doing something, of implementing a mask and then doing it or not, and then doing another vote of the specifics?
we can.
Or you can modify your motion before you make your motion, because you did not read your motion.
No, we
before you
didn't start our discussion. So we haven't, we don't even have a motion on the table yet.
Right.
So we can,
So if you want
Talk
to
about what we
modify
want
the 10
back.
active cases to 15,
Go ahead and start.
or to 20, you guys can discuss that and formulate your motion based off of that. If you wanted to abandon that recommendation and do a 30-day mask mandate, and we revisit it at the October board meeting, you can do something like that. It's totally up to you locally, but if you want to follow this recommendation, you can read that motion and make modifications to it if you so choose.
what does the CDC say about the younger kids? You know, the guidelines K through 12, is that what they're
2
saying?
years old and older.
2 years old and up is what they're now recommending.
That's what they're saying. I mean, I know that's
I thought I read
ridiculous,
that somewhere.
2-year-olds. But now I will tell you that Dawson, one of our pre-K
They're required to have a
classes,
mask right now.
one of our pre-K classes is supported by Dawson Co-op. You know, they funded one of our pre-K classrooms. And Dawson Co-op has a mask mandate. So that one preschool class,
Is the only
They all-
class in the school.
they have to wear a mask all day, every day. The teachers and the students.
Do what? At preschool? Y'all got a preschool class?
We do, currently. Yeah,
We
we
do,
got 3
because-
of them, but one of them has to wear a mask because they're funded by the
Dawson
Co-op.
Cooperative.
And why is that? Because they're funded by, why? Because they're funded by that by that.
Because the Dawson
they're
Co-op,
under Dawson.
They pay
they're
for it.
basically, they pay for it and they set their rules of having a mask mandate for all of their
Wow.
co-op
What if they say they have to be
Wow.
vaccinated?
They're not- they can't get that.
Well, there's no vaccine for anybody under the age of 12 right now.
That is.
Today, there's
That's
not.
wild right there.
But yes, so we do have one pre-K session that is wearing masks full-time.
Man.
I agree wholeheartedly that if parents support a mask mandate, their kids should be showing up in masks. I mean, that just makes sense, you know. Now, if there's some teasing or bullying or, you know, otherwise intimidating kids that wear their masks, that needs to be addressed separately.
Quickly, too.
Yes, absolutely, because that is a personal choice. And I do believe in personal choice. As a parent, as a human being, I believe in choice, but I want to, the other side of me says I want to keep kids in school, and I don't want to have to see these 130 kids in quarantine. it's a quandary. There is no good answer to this. So I'm just saying, there's no good answer, but we have to do something. Either leave things at the status quo or implement a policy of some sort that says when cases reach X, we wear masks, and if they are in high school or they're staff members and they're vaccinated and they want to prove that they're vaccinated, they don't have to wear a mask or quarantine.
I would be, I understand your rationale, but I would be reserved to think we can implement that.
Why?
Because anyone can say they're vaccinated.
No, I'm saying
And our
with proof.
staff, but our staff is gonna have a very difficult time chasing around who's vaccinated every day and saying, oh, I remember they're vaccinated. Kids are kids. And
Well-
as soon as you're trying to park to her, who's gonna wear a mask, and it's an unrealistic expectation to implement that.
I'm just saying the office would be the office of record for those.
Right, but you're walking around.
I'm just saying that our employee, if you're that concerned about education, then are we gonna police masks and figure out who's vaccinated, who's not, or are we gonna teach? Because that's gonna be a job within itself. Everybody either needs to wear one or not wear one.
Yeah, but you can, whoever's making, the teacher makes the list of the close contacts, you just run that through the office and say, well, mark them off because they're.
I understand in
you're saying
theory,
the
there's
vaccinated don't have to wear
450
That's
kids
correct.
in the
I'm
building.
saying-
Like during the regular day.
Right, because they don't have to quarantine if they're
Right.
close contact. Because
So-
the reason we would implement a mask policy is to keep kids out of quarantine.
Right, that's the only reason I would.
And I'm saying, if you're
Let
vaccinated,
me, Dana,
yes. Yes, Brian?
I'm having a problem here because I'm with, I said earlier, my issue is the quarantine number,
Yes.
okay? So I'm having a problem with the fact, I don't want them to wear masks, but I don't want quarantine numbers high. So I'm having a problem with us talking about, well, we're gonna make it, if there's 15 positive, we're gonna wear masks. Well, we're currently, at about a
20.
6.5 per positive in quarantine?
Well,
So
we're
we're
talking,
not solving the quarantine number. If we say 20 and there's 19, that doesn't solve the quarantine number.
that still puts 100+ kids in quarantine.
So what you're just saying
Right.
is if you're concerned about quarantine, you implement a policy to wear a mask to avoid quarantine regardless of the number of case positives.
Well, I mean, that just seems common sense to me, regardless of what I believe about masks. Why would I do 14 and no, but 15 yes, and the quarantine number only changes by about 6 kids?
Well, that's why we're having this meeting.
That's why we're talking about it. The option there is to, put in a mask mandate for everybody for 30 days. But then you evaluate at the end of 30 days, cases are down, you take them off, they go back up. What do you do?
I say we amend it to, we look at it every board meeting. We're here anyways, look at it, just show us the data, what we got. We change it or we don't change it. Just look at
And
it
that's
every
what
board.
most schools in the county have done.
Which is basically a month to month.
Every month to month.
So
But
not this at all.
Don't do
Wear
that at
masks
all.
for 30 consecutive
Right.
days.
Wear it to the
Until
board
the
meeting,
next
to board
meeting.
meeting.
Which kind of helps you a little bit because you were concerned of whether people would understand whether they
Right,
needed to wear the
consistency of wearing
mask or
masks,
not wear the
right.
mask. The confusion is what
Right.
you were worried with about a number.
Right.
that's correct, that's what
Yes.
we talked about was the.
And that
what
would be your
number.
deadline, would be, everybody would jump on that Facebook Live and watch every board member, or every board meeting. And they would know, they'd know when it was coming up to change. Be every board meeting.
And
So-
what
But
would
then
you
need
do
the
then?
standard, what are you
Well, they
looking
would
for at
pull-
that point?
Yeah, but let's say at 30 days, the case numbers are down.
Down to
It's
what?
a local decision.
And
Local
then do
decision.
you take it
I
off?
don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to do right now.
I know.
Ashley wants to do this, Ashley wants to do that.
I know, but do you take the mask mandate off at that time? And then what if cases go back up in a week and a half? Do you reconvene and put it back in? I don't know. It's a hard place to be in.
I say we have something next board meeting that something like this, that we go month to month, but then he can have something like this. So if it is up or down, we'll have something to vote on every meeting.
I mean, because if you look at it, what did you say, Brian? For every positive case, there's about 6.5 kids that are quarantined?
Well, yeah, it's like 6.4, 6.5, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's roughly a 6.5 per positive.
And we've determined that they quarantine for a week to a week and a half.
Yeah, anywhere from 10 days.
Yeah, week to 10 days.
That's where the 14-day window came in
Yeah.
on the model policy.
Last year, it was 14-day quarantine, but they've reduced it to 10. And that's where you came up with this 14-day period of wearing a mask. But, I just lost my train of thought on that.
So one thing that you might consider, I mean, second Monday of September, you're gonna reconvene. You could do something to that point in time, or if you feel like you don't wanna you wanna see how this plays out with the number of active cases, you can put something in motion and reconvene and discuss it at the October board meeting. But you can go month to month if you so choose as a board until we figure out how we wanna deal with it.
But that's not even 14 days.
Correct. I know, that's why I said we're gonna be having another meeting pretty quick.
Yes, we are. I just don't know, you know, and I've seen the other school districts in the county put in a mask mandate for 30 days. How are they going to get out of that? I understand it's a simple vote to say we get out of it, but what happens when you do? Are we essentially, not we, I'm saying those other Garland County schools, have they essentially said, we're putting in a mask mandate for 30 days, but what's going to really happen is it's going to go all year?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because once they go, oh, well, cases are down and let's get out of it, then 10 days later, you're just jumping right back in.
Well, then you jump right back in, I guess.
And we will do some checking to see if there is any validity to having our own quarantine guidelines. But I don't know that we have the latitude to do that, but we can definitely check into it. I know at this point in time, we have followed the point of contact guidelines since the inception, with the understanding we were required to follow.
I would really appreciate that information.
If we have some flexibility
Well, I would think
on
that there have been
following.
other school districts in the state of Arkansas already done that, if that was truly a possibility.
Maybe they haven't asked.
I don't think that, you know, somebody else wouldn't have went first other than us.
Who knows? We're innovative, Dr. Murphy. We might be the first ones to ask that question.
Can we, I mean,
Come on, mama bears here.
go with it might be Thursday, but go to the October board meeting. I mean,
We're 2 weeks out, less than, from the September regular board meeting.
so go to our regular October board meeting,
And then revisit the issue.
revisit the issue in October.
What are we doing now?
That it would be the 11th of October.
I mean,
What are you suggesting? What kind of motion are you suggesting? Corey, do you want to, do we implement the mask?
This motion.
No.
I mean, you can, but,
Because this is going on and on too, really, if you think about it. We're gonna get back after 14 days and start it right back up.
Yeah, you're gonna come back at 14 days, cases are still gonna be there, or they're gonna be down, you're gonna take them off for 3 days,
And then back.
cases will be back up, then you'll be implemented. It sounds like a lot of confusion,
It does sound like a lot of confusion.
honestly. To take them off, put them
so
on.
just read this, vote it, and then if it doesn't, then we can vote it down or whatever, and then,
Do one for 30.
Do
Or
one for-
next school
You don't
board.
even have to read that one.
okay.
We have, it's not on the table yet, so we
Okay,
don't
so
even have to
then-
address it.
You can make a motion that would be to the effect you put in a mask mandate for indoor activities during the instructional day until the October board meeting.
Okay,
Revisit.
to clarify, and so if they're outside, they can take it off.
Yeah, if they're outdoors at recess or at
If they're
ball
inside and they
practice.
can social distance, what's the What's the
We
guidelines there?
still do that. We
Okay,
still
so
allow
teachers can be at the front of the class. Teachers can teach without a mask on. They're 10,
that. As long as
8
we
foot
got
away.
space.
If they
If
leave,
they
if
don't
they leave the
mingle.
front, if they get within 6 foot or 3 foot, whatever,
Then they have to put it
they
on.
put it back on.
Now, what about indoor, what would you do for indoor practice?
Indoor sports, you don't have to wear it.
It's
See, in
indoors.
this motion, I made exclusionary exemptions for,
That you don't wear.
Yeah, you don't wear it playing sports.
Yeah, you can take it off.
But you're still,
Now, if someone gets it that's playing sports, you'll have to contact trace and see if they're,
the whole team's going home.
yeah, pretty much.
Unless they're vaccinated.
Right.
Unless they're vaccinated.
Unless they're high school age and they're vaccinated.
And they, or they can prove that
And
they
they-
weren't 15 minutes accumulated.
Right. So,
Which, guys, these rules do not make sense to me.
they don't, they're not.
I know, but I
How
the
many
community
football, basketball players did we lose last year because of being close and not having masks on?
Cheerleaders.
A bunch.
Yeah.
No, I mean
None
like
of
lost
them
like to
Oh, I mean,
illness, they
nobody-
were in the hospital about.
You
like,
mean
on
lost
death
their
row.
lives?
Well, or got deathly ill or.
Gotcha. I thought you meant lost 2 football games or, had to
So
skip
my
games.
point is, they're exchanging spit on every tackle. I mean, and they're just fine. Well, our kids in the classroom aren't doing that, so they should be even better.
Yeah, maybe. Would you like to?
I have 2 children that are in the high school. One is in athletics, and they are all above the age of 12. And one is in welding, and they are both vaccinated fully. And one chooses to wear a mask to school because a friend of his, a girlfriend, her sister is very immune compromised. So out of respect for the family, he's doing that so that he doesn't carry anything
Over there.
over to their house. But the other one does not want to wear a mask. He is an athlete. He is on the high school football team. Last year, there were several kids that were seniors even. Ian Lacey didn't get to play his last 2 games of his high school career
Because it was in
because
quarantine.
he was quarantined.
Yeah.
He was not sick, he did not have COVID,
Right.
but he was quarantined.
Which eliminated his game plan.
I do believe that we have the right to choose. But when is our right to choose affecting other people? Which, we're a community. Everything we do affects someone else. Everything we don't do affects someone else. My high school kids are not going to wear a mask unless it's mandated. Even if I ask, even if I beg.
And being vaccinated, they wouldn't have to in order to avoid quarantine, based on these weird rules. But anyway.
But along with the vaccination cards, when we got our vaccination, we brought them up to the school, we gave them to the secretary, and she made a copy, and it was sent to Miss Cara. It was sent to her, and she has it on file. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't anything bad.
Right.
And then my junior was in close contact with someone that yesterday tested positive. So I was called and I said, "Oh, you have his vaccination on file." She said, "Thank you. We're free. You're free to go."
So he's not quarantined?
No.
Correct. That is correctly following the rules. Now, before we go, hang on. Board members, Brian included, if we are not going, we haven't read this motion that was originally laid out. until, what do we want to do between now and October's meeting? Not September's meeting, because it's coming right up in another week or so, 2 weeks. Do we want to do nothing and continue to watch the data? Do we want to put in a mandate until October? You know, there's no good way to do it, because you want to keep kids in the classroom. So either they have to be vaccinated or they have to be wearing a mask. If we have to follow CDC rules. Now, Brian, you brought up a good point that Dr. Murphy can ask. Are we bound to follow, as a school district, are we bound to follow those quarantine guidelines? Or can we say, you know, huh?
I don't know why they would, I mean.
We made a recommendation for you tonight based on the facts and the information that we have today.
Yeah, because I know AAA has a different guidelines
and that recommendation, just for everyone's awareness, was that we implement a mask policy to go into effect during the instructional program, and also to be utilized on all school buses.
Or do you want to read this motion?
I would say I would say read this one because it has the extracurricular, the after school, no mask policy, you know, after school, or like at ball games and outside, outdoors activities, unless you're gonna redo the whole thing.
So this recommendation.
Yeah, so if you were to cross out the first three paragraphs.
Correct.
And go down and cross out if the district is under, under required mask status, and then begin with the word all.
Yes.
And read that down to the bottom of the next, or the top of the next page. Yes, to the top of the next page, and then put the board will reconsider this action on October 11th, 2021. And that be your motion?
And that would implement an immediate mask policy
with the criterion in place
until the October meeting.
You're striking the first three paragraphs with all the criteria.
You know, would the board rather see it be based on just 2 weeks?
Can y'all specificate elementary, middle school, and high school in your mandate?
But we had that discussion, but because we all eat in the same cafeteria and our kids cross paths going to music and they share buildings, we just felt like that if we were going to put a positive case number in place, we would do it district-wide because our kids ride in the same buses. We don't have two-tiered bus routes, so we have a lot of interaction. Our little bitty kids don't interact too much, but our middle school and high school, they cross paths a lot during school days. So that was kind of our rationale. We obtained this criterion from another district that really took it and kind of looked at local data versus trying to look at state type data. How many cases you have actively within your school is a criterion for making a decision to implement the policy or take the policy off the table. That was kind of what our thoughts were, bringing this to the Board of Education for consideration. I do know all the other schools in Garland County indicated a mask policy, and I saw a text there that took a number of cases in Mountain Pine. They're having to give consideration to a mask mandate for a period of time as well. But the policies that they implemented were not based on any number of cases. They were just solely a mask policy to go into effect for 30 days, 60 days, and then they revisit it. So the bottom of the motion.
Yes, where Cindy knows where it is.
That part of the motion, that will give you the discretionary measure to put something into effect for a period of time that you so disclose.
Okay, with the understanding, if we vote for this, that it would be reviewed at the October 11th. It would be,
Reconsider.
can we say it would be set to expire? You can't?
You could, but
Yeah,
it
you
may
can do
not.
whatever you want to do.
It may not.
You may not expire.
Well, unless it's re-voted on
Yeah, you could
in
re-vote
the
on it.
October meeting.
If you're gonna revisit it, it's the same as
Because I
reevaluating.
I want to keep kids in school. I want to reduce the number of quarantines. But I would like to discuss the possibility of
Taking it away. Or redoing it.
of redoing it, or saying that vaccinated students and staff are exempt from this. I would like to revisit it. I don't want to just set it in a place right now and say it's permanent.
No, I think it needs to be revisited every year. Start, they're not
Every
gonna be
regular
regular.
scheduled board meeting.
Right.
Because-
Well, October board meeting.
Not
We got one in
September.
September.
But it's not, yeah. So, starting in October.
You revisit it, it may change to something, you know, maybe the K2, K through 2 doesn't have to wear them, or, you know, whatever they decide, we decide to do. Just saying.
Because it
Mr.
could
Murphy,
be, yes? Right.
what is our supply of masks on campus that people need masks right
So
now?
we've gotten several boxes. I mean, we have, how much?
4,000 right now.
We got 4,000 currently available to hand out.
Okay.
Does that include what we got from Dawson? Because we got a shipment from Dawson here recently as well, and I would say there are probably 600 or so in there. And those are student size masks as well as adult size.
Elementary, middle school, and hospital size.
Okay.
Quit stressing, I feel like you're stressing.
I am.
Why,
y'all say I am. It stresses me because
Yeah, listen,
I have an
understand.
opinion about it that doesn't necessarily align with what I need to do for students.
I know.
I know, and you're missing long okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, so the
Brian,
motion,
wait, hold on. Brian, are you listening? Cindy,
Yes.
Cindy is reading a motion. She's putting one on the table.
motion to
Okay.
adopt the following COVID-19 mask policy effective August 24th, 2021 until October 11th, 2021. All staff and students on school buses will be required to wear a mask. Students involved in indoor athletic or music practices may remove masks while actively engaged in the practice. Exemptions to mask requirements for medical, religious, or other reasons will be addressed at the building level. Masks will be recommended at all indoor events. Current case counts and the mask status will be posted at 3 p.m. each day on our website.
Okay. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
That's not gonna work.
So we still have to vote on this one, but we're gonna have to vote this one down. Because it said only on school buses.
Or,
Yeah.
or indoor activities.
Or, no, it said recommended at indoor activities.
Okay?
So the motion on the table, we're not gonna discuss it. All in favor, say aye. All in favor, all opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is voted down. Oh, sorry, Brian. I didn't even wait for you to say. It's hard when I'm not sitting here looking.
I vote.
All students, okay.
I voted.
Okay,
So the motion,
so Cindy, are you modifying the
sorry.
motion?
Mr. Campbell is.
Okay.
And I read that slow too, because I talk
Yeah.
fast.
You're going to read slow again.
Okay.
so all
Miss Dana,
Yes.
I'm Pat Howard. What is wrong with being the first school to take a stand for common sense? What is wrong with being the first one? It's wrong to mask our kids. We all know it's wrong to mask our kids. they don't get sick and die. This is wrong, and we know that it's wrong. Intellectually, you know that it's wrong, but we're willing to use them as pawns because we will lose our money. We might get sued, or we won't get our federal funding. What's wrong with us? Why can't we be first? And just take a stand and say, no, we're not gonna do it. You say you're against masks and you're against vaccinations, but for the sake of a game, you're gonna go ahead and
No,
go
I'm
along
not
with it.
saying just a
I'm
game.
sorry, that's not a personal attack, but
I'm saying,
it's just so wrong.
I'm saying to keep the kids in school, this is all that we have to do.
But that mentally, what does that do to them? Does it make them think that
No,
that's right? It's not right.
I agree. And
It's
that's why
wrong.
we're gonna look at it in a month.
As the grown-ups in the room, we should be taking a stand to protect them from mental abuse.
So what do we do if we say no mandate and we have 300 kids at home?
That's why I said that the quarantine guidelines need to be.
Arbitrary
And that's
guidelines,
what we're gonna
look
get
into
more
a lawyer,
data.
look
That's why
into
we-
legal
To
advice.
see if we can do that.
I spoke with a lawyer.
That's the
He's
system.
State Representative Bob Ballard.
But that gives us time.
Speak to a
Alan
lawyer.
Clark, Senator Clark will stand with you. Mary Binkley,
But I
Representative, she'll
can't
stand with you.
just say, okay, we're not gonna mandate it because you said that I could go talk to Alan Clark.
But why
We're gonna
can't you
get-
talk to a lawyer before you act?
Yes.
Why can't you say, we're gonna talk to a lawyer, we're gonna get some
Before we
legal
mask our
advice,
kids.
and then we'll decide if we're gonna act in October?
So what do so it's been 7 days, we got 130 kids out.
A lot of schools have a lot of kids out and they're masking. If you look at it, these schools that are masking, they've got more children out than you.
No,
More.
Well,
Not all of them.
There's a lot that do though. I didn't say all.
understand.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
We can't.
And I was just looking at, I'll give you some
Just
numbers.
some.
From Garland County. At Lakeside, they currently have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 65-ish in quarantine. Lakeside schools. Their population, their school population is, with staff and students, right at 4,000.
And he told me on Monday they had over 30 positive cases in school.
They have a bunch. Now, I'll just tell you, Hot Springs, they have, as they had like 23, oh, they didn't put how many they had quarantined. They just had the number of cases. They didn't put their quarantine numbers.
So Lake Hamilton has two, it sounded like 2 to 1, right? 2 quarantined to 1 positive.
That was Lakeside.
That was Lakeside.
So I said
Sorry.
65, yes,
But, so that's where
yes.
the numbers come from the school saying that these people will need to be contacted, right? So y'all have that in your hands,
Right.
correct?
Say again?
We
So-
have
so-
a guideline that we're required to follow that some people believe is a recommendation that we could ignore it. We've not received any legal counsel guidance that will allow us to ignore the quarantine rules. And that's kind of what you're alluding to, is take a stand and ignore the quarantine rules. The board's indicating they want to keep kids in school, so we either ignore the quarantine rules or implement a policy to reduce the number of students that are outside the school setting. That's
Yes.
why we're here tonight.
And just for the record, I just want to say, Lake Hamilton numbers on their website today, their population is about 4,700. They
Students.
had, no, students and staff, they've combined, it's about 4,700. They have current active cases, they have 21, and they have
We
current,
have 20.
they have current quarantined of 96. And they have a mask mandate, and Lakeside has a mask mandate, and Hot Springs has a mask mandate. Understand?
And Butter has that.
Okay, so now Cindy's ready with her new motion.
Motion to adopt the following COVID-19 mask policy effective August 24th, 2021 until October 11th, 2021. Masks will be required for all staff and students during normal school hours when indoors and on school buses. Students involved in indoor athletic or music practices may remove masks while actively engaged in the practice. Exemptions to mask requirements for medical, religious, or other reasons will be addressed at the building level. Masks will be recommended at all indoor events, Current case counts and the mask status will be posted at 3 p.m. each day on our website.
Okay, Brian, were you able to hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on it? Board members? Brian, do you have any other comments? Before we vote? Okay. So this motion would be to adopt a mask policy effective today, August 24th, through the October 11th school board meeting. And it would require all staff and students on school buses or in classrooms during normal school hours to wear a mask. If they're involved in indoor athletic or music practice, they can remove the mask while they are actively engaged in that practice. And exemptions for medical, religious, or other reasons will be addressed at the building level with the building principal, I'm assuming. The mask will be recommended at all indoor events. And the current case counts and the mask status will be posted at 3 p.m. each day on our webpage. Okay, board members, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, the motion carries 5-0. I understand it's not a popular decision. It's not a end-all be-all, and the board is going to actively request some additional information before October 11th. What we don't want to see is this be a permanent thing for our kids this year. Let's see if we can at least keep them in school till October 11th, when we can have more information to make a different, possibly, decision. And I do appreciate all of our members here. I appreciate people watching at home. I appreciate our community members. And I appreciate your comments. It's not an easy thing for this board, because it's just not. You've heard our discussion. You know we're torn about it. So we commit.
You'll get a chance to revisit it in October.
Yes, and we commit to you that we will be actively seeking information that could better this situation for our kids. So we thank you for being here.
Christian Ministries Academy doesn't require them.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know, she already has a mask exemption, because I knew this was going to happen.
Right.
So when you're saying building authority, or like the principal, it's not like, it's their decision of if they're taking the
They
mask.
will work. They
We're
will
gonna work with you.
They'll work in conjunction with Mr. Campbell and Dr.
Okay.
Murphy if needed.
That's who you'll go to.
The building is who needs to know.
Yeah.
To have the exemption.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You go to that building.
Yes.
Okay.
So we will conclude our discussion of the mask topic for tonight and revisit that at our October 11th board meeting. Okay? We're going to move on to other business. You are welcome to stay if you'd like. You're certainly welcome all the time.
Thank you for letting me speak.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being here. All right. So let's move on.
You gotta go.
Okay.
So we've got
Yes.
Lloyd out.
You did. Thank you, Lloyd, for doing that. I appreciate you staying.
See you guys.
You need to go? We won't have a quorum if you leave. Will we?
Still have a quorum
Oh.
to run.
Brian can.
It's
Can you
discussion
count
items,
as,
there's no.
okay, there's no other action?
Action.
Okay,
We can conduct our
Then you can go.
discussion.
yes. Okay, Brian, so,
Are you staying with us, Brian?
Do I need to?
Yes.
yes,
Or
you
we
do.
will bring the other two topics back to the board at a later date. But we do have Ray Beardsley on the line, and we would discuss
Yeah.
budget briefly and see if you have any additional questions there.
We've got Tanya here, and we've got Ray on the line. We'll be very brief as we can. We will certainly not lengthen it out like that. So if you can hang out with us, Brian, that would be great.
Oh, I'm staying. I'm staying.
He doesn't
Okay.
have anywhere to go.
Okay, you're in quarantine, you
I
can't
can't
go.
go anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so, let's talk about the budget for this school year. And we will be utilizing Tanya's wealth of knowledge here.
So we've got several links that we can kind of go over. I did link in, it was in your booklet. Item 1 was the state foundation funding estimate, and we are exempt from state foundation funding. This was a part of the booklet that Ray Beardsley showed us, so we have that available for you to review. We've used those projections and categoricals. Those are pretty tight numbers, and so that basically covers 1, 2, and 4 in terms of funds for us to give consideration to as it relates to revenue. So we have a revenue projection, and I've kind of line itemed this. We're trying to use some of our reporting out of the system. But
Now
when
that,
you,
can I ask, now that the room's fairly empty, can you take your mask off so Brian might can hear this part of it better?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he would be able to hear you more clearly
Okay.
at a distance, and we're plenty social distance.
So this report that we have here is kind of identifies each of the categoricals and property tax revenue. The lump sum of total revenue down at the bottom is a little over 18 million. So you can scroll at the bottom and get a total of projected revenue. We feel pretty confident that our revenue will stand in that area, and we'll be bringing back a revenue figure that'll be relatively close to that, wouldn't you think, Tanya?
Yes, sir. Now, is this for the coming year?
For the current year in which we're in, the
This
year started in
21,
July, so
22.
this is our 21-22 school year.
Okay.
And we've had some expenditures out of this year, but here again, we've had some revenue receipted, so you're looking first year at the revenue.
Yep.
Just so the next document comparatively to that you have and the community has access to is takes a look at the expenditures for 21-22. Now what we're looking at here is an estimated projection that does include on the expenditure side and on the revenue side the ESSER funds. So she's worked to build the ESSER funds in here, and we have identified the locations of the expenditures within the ESSER funds as a part of the overall expenditure side of the fence. When we look at how our budget has been running, go ahead and go to the bottom of that, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, because you're showing a deficit.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Campbell's out.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yes, and I
Great
talked to
time.
Tanya about this, and where we're at currently, we have had, if you look, and that's why I gave you historical, we've got about a 10% variance in the budget, so roughly that's about a $1.9 million variance in terms of we're showing a deficit, but when we complete the actual expenditures, we're expending roughly 10% off of the budgeted number when you look at all of the different areas.
So in layman's terms, you are over budgeting, but you're preparing to underspend.
Yes, we will.
You are budgeting really high with the knowledge that you're pretty sure you're not going to spend all of it.
Well, we look historically at what those expenditures have been, and Tanya, I'm going to give you an opportunity because I've had this discussion with you since you've had a chance to sit there, and so as we look at the element of budgeting, there's some components of the expenditures that are in restricted funds that are a part of our fund balances.
That have to be budgeted, but we will not spend all of it.
Okay. But you have to budget it.
But we have to budget.
We have to budget it because
Even
some of
though
it could get carried over.
Gotcha.
So that doesn't give us a true latitude because you and I have had these discussions, and I've done everything I can to try to tighten the expenditure allocations as tight as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But each year is just like general supplies. We had a $450,000 variance in money left on the table in general supplies, but we've got general supplies from the custodial closet back across the board to every office, to the nurse's office, to other areas, and they may be budgeted $1,000 in their allocation, and they spend 400 of it or 600 of it in a given year, and so it leaves $400 that was not spent. So what I had them run for you to take a deeper look at, and you'll have to kind of step away from it and come back with some questions prior to our next meeting,
Right.
but I run the actual 2 and 3 year historical expenditures.
Okay.
So that you could say, okay, if we're budgeting this allocation, if you go to the historical side of the fence, is that what you pulled up now?
That's current.
Current, what do you want?
I'm just looking at what you've got. Go back to the top of it so I can kind of see what you're looking at. There you go, there you go. So that's year-to-date with encumbrances, but it doesn't have any prior year information. We do have another report linked in there that shows you some prior year, like 2021 and 1920, so that we could kind of say, okay, what's our spending pattern?
Right.
To give you the confidence without her going in and having to totally revamp that budget. When we know that those spending practices occur there.
So why is our revenue, when I'm looking at the 20, is that the 2021?
No, is that what you want?
You want to go back to 2021?
Yeah, pull up the 2021 equivalent report. That,
Their
is that-
revenue.
you know, down, there's another link in the agenda that's down below that current one.
So go back to your agenda.
See the 2021 revenue or expenditures, go down to item C.
Right there.
Go to, actually, it's probably item D, because didn't that show,
So there you were at 17.3 on a projection in the prior year. And you
Okay.
took in 17.9.
gotcha.
So you took in close to the 18 million in revenue.
Okay, so,
So I'll go back to the
And the
original statement. I
expenses,
do not
yeah.
believe the revenue is inflated, and you could probably garner more revenue than what's even projected.
gotcha.
So
And expenditures are not budgeted as a percent of revenue. They are budgeted based on prior year actuals.
based
Or-
on prior year actuals, activity, and special projects,
Correct.
because we've had.
But you don't
this-
just say, we're gonna spend 10% of our funds on X.
No.
Okay, okay, I'm good with that.
But I think taking this historical look back to that and then giving her a little bit more time to really flush this out. This is the first exercise to the final, and we're hoping that we can tighten some more expenditure numbers, but we feel like we're pretty close.
Yeah, because I knocked out quite a bit this afternoon.
We were sitting around 20 million in terms of expenditures, so we went line item to line item, looked at prior years, thought of places, and then with the assumption that probably this overall budget, the way it's been performing in the prior years, has got about a 10%. When I say a 10% variance, what that means is 10% of the overall expenditures will not be spent.
Correct.
So if there's 19 million there, 1.9 million will not be spent. Part of the discussions that you and I have had is if we do have the available funds, could we apply that to salaries, other special projects, to do what we could do to continue to tighten the expenditure side? That's the conversations that we've had in the past in that regard. And so that, you know, we've had all of our principals look at their budgets. I've had Hayden work with his guys, and not only on the transportation side, facility side, and technology side. The only thing that I don't have earmarked in there right now is if the board had a special project, because when you look at the prior year, we had in construction roughly 600,000 allocated because we did this dirt work over here.
Right.
And we ended up paying for that out of Fund 3
Mm-hmm.
as a special project. She's waiting, the only other number that you need to have before you that you don't have tonight is she's waiting on a final edit from
Journal entry.
QSCAB on a journal entry so that I can
Okay.
reset your fund balances, but we had a surplus in prior year, and we'll probably end back, when we conduct our transfer, we'll probably take our building fund back over $1 million again,
Mm-hmm.
where we were gonna spend it down below $1 million. So that's just a general overview there. I wanted you to see this information before we actually have to approve a budget prior to the end of September. My goal would be to approve the budget itself in the September meeting. So it gives us time to figure out what questions we need to answer. Is there additional information that we need? The other thing linked in there is a pretty detailed level of expenditures on the ESSER funds. The only thing that maybe you haven't seen yet is we are meeting with Hill and Cox to see if we could present a facility proposal to the state to do a cafeteria expansion, because we currently do not have enough cafeteria space to even socially distance, and we continue to use the PE building, so we thought that would be an appropriate expenditure. Could we add on to the cafeteria, refigure the serving lines to help students social distance in that regard out of ESSER 3. But that's an area you need to be able to take time to kind of look at, and then just, you know, get a notepad, make a list of questions, and then you can kind of send them to me in an email, and then Tanya and I will begin to address them on an individual basis or collectively with the whole board.
Okay, and I'm just gonna say thank you so much for putting together the way you did here with the revenue and the expenditures for a 3-year history there. Well, 2 years of history and then the current year. That makes it really easy and straightforward for us to look at and compare. So that was a great way to lay that in there for us.
The only other comment I would make is we're continuing to monitor the definitions of within the coding. Mr. Campbell's involved in that. And so there might be, you may see some historical changes on an expenditure, and it may mean that that expenditure just didn't disappear, but it may end up being coded differently. So we do have state requirements that we have to follow. So sometimes when you know, there may be, and that's where some of those questions will come up, because you'll look at it and say, well, we're budgeting here, but now we're budgeting 0.
Yeah.
And the reason potentially that we could be budgeting 0 is because the requirements on how you code that have shifted.
Okay.
So some of that
The
happens.
state wants a more detailed explanation of how we're spending our money, so they're developing new codes that we have to use.
Gotcha.
That even further details out the budget.
Gotcha. And this came from that system?
Yes, that's
Yes, that's
e-finance
directly out of the
through,
system.
through the
Okay.
State Department.
And what I've done for you guys in the past, in the level of, we've had that level of detail, but what I've typically done is given you a fund summary
Yes.
of funds 1 through 8, that kind of is a cheat sheet summary of this level of detail. What I would share with you is that the district remains to be solvent, has been able to consistently manage a balanced budget, you know, historically, as you begin to look back at those different years. But just take some time, take a look at that, and don't hesitate to get a hold of each of us, just so that I'm in the conversation. Just copy me if you can send it to me and copy Tanya, either way, but just so that we both know the questions being asked. That way we don't have to forward it to one or another, and then the question doesn't get answered.
Yes, okay.
So
Good
just
deal.
anytime you have a question, just send it to both of us. That's all I ask.
Okay. And Tanya, thank you for doing this level of work for us and for being so good at your job.
Well, thank you.
You did a great job. And
I tried.
we made you stick around tonight for a while, but
It was interesting.
yeah. So we're glad
She
you're.
didn't put her
you're
mask
here.
on though.
I wasn't required.
As in
Tomorrow.
Yeah. So, let's go, to the master facility plan and we'll draw Ray. I hope Ray's still out there. Ray, are you still with us?
Yes, I am still with you.
I am so sorry, Ray,
Oh, it's no problem.
that you've been in here hanging out for so long. I do apologize.
Oh, no problem, glad to.
I hope you were able to get some work done while you were on hold back there.
Or watched a good movie, I don't know which.
Yeah. So let's talk about this because Ray is the one who will draft our ballot language when it comes time for the millage vote. And let's see, what do we have in this?
Well,
We have the,
I'll give you just a brief rundown that kind of capstones everything we've been talking about. You know, we have a proposed construction plan.
yes,
That plan includes an elementary school, build out through third grade, a reconfiguration of bringing fifth grade into an intermediate setting, making the middle school grades 6 through 8. We're going to have a build out at the high school that entertains taking all of our elective courses out here near the new parking structure. An additional gymnasium with a community center as a component of that. An entry point that ties everything together with paid parking entering into all of our facilities. Our baseball and softball field and tennis court being relocated up behind the press box with a roadway that connects our Highway Park Avenue junction that we have in our new entrance and takes it down by the current tennis courts. And I am meeting with Judge Mahoney to make sure that that roadway could be meeting all specifications, be turned over to the county, and that could become the new Cobra Drive that would take you from Fox Pass out here to the new entry point. So all of that is a part of the new construction proposal. You know, my intentionality there is to get the current position of the board and when the board would like to take action. I've given you the LinkedIn election timelines, and board action associated with that would be recommended either on September our next board meeting in September is what, the 13th? Is that correct?
Yes.
They're being listed. And then, of course, we could hold off until October. In the planning element of communication, the longer you wait, the more inclined, less time you have to plan your campaign proposal
right.
and educate the community. So I think one of the things we have to think about is we have to make sure that we flush out, is this plan aligning with our long-term goals?
Correct.
Is this a plan that we're ready to move forward? And if so, are we shooting for a February election date? The other option would be a May, and that would coincide probably your regular election. You and I sit in on a meeting where I think you could hold a special election in May, but it'd be so close to your board election it wouldn't make sense.
It would make sense, yeah. No, I'm
Other option would be you would have to, as a Board of Education, vote to change when you hold your board election and move it to November, and that would give you an August opportunity for an election. So that's really the options that the board has. I brought in...
I personally would like to see a February
Right.
election. Is that what
And
you're...
I'm fine with that, but we're going to pair up right against, and we've had this discussion, but
Yeah.
there will be probably, and keep in mind that 72% of our last vote came out of the Hot Springs Village.
Correct.
And the Hot Springs Village will be voting on an assessment increase in October, this fall. So they're going to vote. Any property owner association is going to receive a ballot. They're going to vote up or down. new money on the assessment that will occur prior to our election. Stephanie Heffer told me that if that was voted, and here again, I did not have a chance to confirm this, but she did tell me that if that was voted down, then they may run it again in January. And so what could be happening within the village is a couple of votes to increase their local property assessments. And then they have to turn around and support a property tax increase to the tune of $100 annually for every $100,000 worth of appraised value, or $20,000 assessed value. With that just kind of, we just got to know everything in this process, and you know, as Lloyd indicated in a prior meeting, at some point, based on constraints in buildings, you know, we talked about our classrooms being full and all of our kids being back. We currently have one classroom available in the entire elementary school. That's the K1 and 2-4. One. So, you know, if your grade levels continue to crawl upward, we may be forced to put a couple of modulars in behind Safe Room B in the interim.
So,
now with that being said, you have one science lab open in the middle school. And with the situation in the middle school currently, we have 2 classrooms vacated until you got an email from me on that. They're investigating that on truss issue in Mr. Bellamy's room. So,
so, you know, I don't know where, Brian, where you fall on this, but I still, even looking at the village voting in October on POA, I still would like to see us go for a February election. Just because you don't really want to do it in May, right next to just back-to-back 2 elections, and August is a year away. I mean, I think we need to just do our very best to get it done in February.
I agree.
Okay, and I think, because I see on our agenda, and I'm guessing Ray has access to that too, that we would take board action. We could take board action on September 13th, which would be taking, building out that draft ballot language and approving it.
well, what I had and worked with Ray on was developing the draft ballot language. So if you go to that draft ballot language, it's created and already should be ready. It's for us to get our eyes on, take a critical look at it, but it should be the actual ballot language that we would approve. And so I've listed it as draft.
Yes.
But in working with him, the ballot language alludes to the total number of mills that we have. We have our 27.05 mills that are specifically for maintenance and operation. The 12.75 mills would be voted for debt service, previously voted as a continuing levy pledge for the retirement of the existing bonds, and 5 new debt mills. The 5 new debt mills would then be in addition to the 7.75. So one of the reasons I wanted Ray on the call is to discuss whether we want to bundle the existing 7.75 mills with the 5 mills. And the reason I'm guiding you towards this recommendation is because to borrow $42 million to construct the facilities and design the plan we're going to design, you are going to, the 5 mills that you're voting to approve will take almost all of your money towards the payment of the debt. So you won't have much surplus left.
Correct.
So if you continue to grow, you're going to need to guarantee yourself that surplus to operate your buildings, hire new staff, or in 2036, you would be running a risk between 2031 and 2036 that you would have to reinstitute that 7.75 mils on another obligation of debt and a further obligation to reinstate it to use it for operational purposes, because just short of $2 million currently helps fund our budget, and the remaining amount makes the debt payment on the $10 million. So with that, Ray, I'm gonna stop and let them ask some questions, and then we can kind of talk about if we were to not bundle the 7.75 with the 5 mils, kind of play the two, what's the advantage or disadvantage, and maybe you can clarify that in a different degree. But I'm going to first ask Brian, because he's remote. Is there any of that you'd have a question on, Brian?
No, I'm good.
Cindy or Dana?
Are we gonna be looking at that attachment on the agenda that's called Annual Financial Review Booklet? Is that the one that's gonna show us our options?
The one with the additional information is the new one that Ray put together. And Ray, you might jump in there. I don't know if you have that one before you, but if you remember, we had an option 4 that I had to put together.
Yes.
Can you kind of go over that one with them?
Yeah, I'm really scared of option 4. I mean, obviously, that's what the board chooses. The downside to 4, as Dr. Murphy alluded to, if in 2037, we don't go back and get the original debt mills, which is the 7.75 extended, we're going to lose $2 million a year in operating money. So I'm really scared of option 4.
So, just for clarification for board members that may not remember this part of it, when you have debt mills and the bonds which were financed with those debt mills gets paid off, you automatically have to drop those debt mills out of your tax rate. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, unless prior to them dropping off, you go to the voters and extend it out. It's just like the cities and counties do with sales tax. If they go out and they pass a 1 cent sales tax and sunset it to go off in 15 years, an example, well, they'll go to the voters prior to 15 years and extend it.
Yes.
And it won't fall off. Well, this is the same situation.
Yes, so you have to either, you have to trust that your electorate is gonna vote to extend it at that point. You're kind of at their mercy.
Right.
Yeah, I would rather, option 1 gives you the same thing as the 5 new debt mills, but does produce you more project money, but we can downsize the project money if you don't need it, but it gives you $46,400,000 per project.
Now, where are you seeing that?
Option 1.
Where, on which?
Go back to your booklet.
Front cover.
We got the whole booklet in there for you.
Okay, so it's on that booklet?
Yeah, there you go.
What page are we seeing there?
14.
I don't have the book, I apologize.
Keep going a little bit, we
Page-
gotta go past that. It's
Okay, we're getting there, hang on.
There you go.
Page 14? All right.
Now, this was the one that he kind of reviewed when we were
Yes.
together.
Uh-huh.
So we're asking for 5 new debt mills. We're extending all the mills, the 5 mills, new and existing 7.7 out through 2052.
Okay.
So it's a 30-year bond, and the mills are out for 30 years. And then we'll give you $46,400,000 for projects, or if you need less, we can, downsize the amount of project money. But that's the max we can give you is 46.4.
Gotcha.
Where the option 2 we showed you would only give you $24,180,000 in project money, because we're only out through 2037 with the bonds, and we don't extend the current bills out, which means someday we'll have to go back and extend them anyway.
Yeah,
What question is, do we do it now, or do we do it later?
yeah.
And that option there, you were trying to pay that off about the same time as the other debt, correct?
Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
correct.
that didn't even carry out 30 years.
That puts us out to 2037, which would mean it's
16.
a 15-year bond.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, that's very super conservative in the context of the expenditure, and I would go that route in the event that interest rates were extremely high, but we have a very good market that's a rate market that you can leverage your money longer, and I'm not really interested in a 15-year note to that degree, knowing how difficult it is to pass a millage to begin with.
Yes, exactly. So really,
Option one makes the most sense.
option one makes the most sense.
And that's kind of reflected in your ballot language. The only difference is I chose 42 million versus going for the max of 46, and we have a little bit more work to do to make sure that we're covering all projects, and we've got Modus and Hill and Cox currently talking about things that we can give consideration to doing. The unfortunate thing in this process is you guys observed in the detail of, it was a great project, we moved a ton of earth, but we're gonna have to invest some money in road construction and dirt leveling
yeah.
again.
Yes.
That is somebody that doesn't really understand what we're asking to do might say that's an excessive amount of money to build a building.
Right.
So,
But
I mean, we've got to
involves a lot
act up, yes, it involves a lot of
dirt work.
and facility development, with the addition of relocation of the tennis courts, ball fields, and 2 buildings, along with a roadway. So, I don't feel as though, the good thing is that we feel confident we can stay under the max.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think option one, now you presented us option 4, which was, let me go back to that.
Where you go back to the voters, right?
How is that different? How is option 4 different?
The difference in 4 and 1 is that the new debt mills, the 5 new debt mills are out through 2052, but we did not extend the 7.75 debt mills out at all. We left them where they're at. So we're going to rely that before 2037, which we'd have to at least do it a couple of years for that, we could go to the voters and they would agree to extend that 7.75 out. If they didn't, you would lose $2 million a year in operating revenue.
Right.
Gotcha.
That's a big gamble.
Now, do I no, never mind. I thought I had a question, but I don't.
And then the other thing we have to be mindful of is the last time that we did have, I think, a millage increase was 92. So we're not accustomed to going with any degree of frequency to the voters with any level of success. So that, when you look historically at the length of time from a prior millage increase, I wouldn't want to guide the board to maybe try to run another millage and stage it in 7 or 8 years.
Right.
Knowing that you haven't been to the voters for that length of time, I think it kind of guides us towards bundling the mills.
So, Ray, we would need to approve this at either our September 13th or October 11th meeting, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We've got, the budget has got to run in the paper. We also have to notify the county clerk that's new in this legislature passed change in the election, and 70 days in advance of the election, they have to be notified we're having an election.
Okay.
So I have one question for you, Ray, in front of the board. I would want to ask if we run the exact language and we find out that really we needed 38 million to do all of our projects instead of 42 million, but we approved ballot language at 42 million, once we have that approved, we're authorized to borrow the full 42 million. Is there a way that that number is ever altered, or must it be altered in the ballot language? How do you deal with the surplus?
Altered in the ballot language, but we have in all bonds, we have a provision that you may pay back the money you do not need.
Okay.
Toward the oldest bonds first. We pay those off. So we would take, for example, instead of 42, you would take, and you needed 38, you'd take 4 million and pay it back.
Okay, and we do have to, just so the board understands, all money from the point in time of the vote approved, we have to expend within 3 years, or after we have actually received the money within 3 years of that time frame. So once we receive the money, we have 3 years to expend the money by law.
Correct. IRS rules.
That's the rule.
Well, how long did it take to receive the money? How long does it take? I forgot.
How long does it take to?
If it happens in February, we would close in April or before. So you'd have at the end of March or April, you would have the money, and then you'd have 36 months. We can even hold up selling for a few months if we needed to, but that's when we would sell normally.
Right, right. And you know, watching this rate environment currently, it still remains to be advantageous to secure in the current environment. So we'd probably do that. We feel like our plans are being developed with a high level of detail, but here again, I just wanted to ask that question and make sure that we were aware of how that would fall out. I really don't have any other comments on that unless we have additional questions, but I wanted to have him here tonight.
Yeah, so.
Is there other questions you or Cindy?
No, Brian, do you have any questions on any of that?
No, that's all pretty clear.
Okay.
Can we put it on there for September?
So I think, Ray, we're gonna put that on there. We're gonna ask Mr. Campbell and Dr. Murphy to put it on for the September meeting.
Okay.
So
we'll
because-
have documents prepared by the bond attorney that states that the September, at the September board meeting for a February 2022 election.
Yes, that is, we've talked about this enough, and I feel confident, even with 2 members that had to leave earlier, I feel confident that they agree with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Someone from
And Dr. Murphy, I'll need, to finalize that, I'll need a clarification on the amount of net funds you want to be included there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Sorry we had to string you out so long, Ray.
Thank you for spending your evening with us.
Yeah, we do appreciate it.
You bet. I'm always here for you, so
Thank
that's
you.
no problem.
Thank you so
Thank you, Ray.
much.
Thank you.
All righty.
Great. Thanks.
So the only other topic is board meeting agendas. You and I had some discussion, we want to have that here for review. And then
And I'll just throw this out there, we don't have to decide on it tonight, but I want the board members to think, and I'll get in touch with Corey and Lloyd too. Because we spend a lot of our time at board meetings just like approving bills or approving expenditures or talking about projects. And we don't often devote a lot of time to discussing the educational part of the district, the actual meat of why we do what we do as a board. And that's talking about academic achievement and improvements and things like that for our kids. We just don't spend as much time doing that. And I would like to see something, you know, and maybe because our agenda is not set in stone. We can change that however we would like, but I would like for y'all to be thinking about things that you would like to see that would indicate to you something about academics. You know, for instance, and this is something I picked up at a conference recently, you know, do we want to see things like absenteeism rates? Do we want to see discipline reports, how many discipline issues we're having? Do we want to see failure rates for particular classes? Or, you know, what classes do our kids seem to be struggling with the most? Or, you know, do we want to, you know, we need to...
Or where's the highest degree of retention?
Yes,
Something like that.
yes, it doesn't have to all be negative stuff. I'm just saying... From
Negative or positive, but I mean, it's the impact of the instructional model.
Yes, I feel like as board members, we need to be more aware, maybe, or more informed about the educational part of the district.
I think that would place us more in the, that would make us feel more placed like in the classroom. You know what I mean? Like knowing
Yes.
what goes on.
Yes.
With the instruction, be a part of the right school.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Or, you know, just...
I'd like that.
Now, there's two things that I would say there. One, is it a data point you're seeking or a deeper level of understanding? Because a deeper level of understanding, I've had individuals come and present. The thing that we've got to guard is length of meeting.
Yes.
And length of presentation.
Yes.
So an example of that is I formulated opportunities for presentations at meetings, whether that be repetitive on an annual basis, whether we want to hear from the counselors on an annual basis, whether we wanted to hear from different groups on an annual basis, or whether we wanted to have an update on mental health as a component of that. But having those individuals speak with data is a little different than us just linking in a data point. So,
Correct.
I mean,
and I would...
you got to figure out how to protect your time.
Yes, and
as a
what,
component.
you know, what I was thinking, and I don't want to make a decision, I just want the board members to be thinking about it, is you say, okay, well, each month at the meeting, we're going to have a 5 to 10 minute report from a building or like say, okay, middle school counselor comes in August and February, twice a year. They give us a little update. Or the elementary principal comes in March and November or whatever. I mean, we could work it where we do get little mini reports, and we could ask for, you know, certain pieces of data. Like, don't just come and say, oh, everything's great, we're having a good time, life's fun. But get some, you know, some true meat from them that
something
would
that
help us
that
understand.
you implemented last year, or allowed us to implement. We brought a recommendation to you to have a different strategy than ISS.
Yes.
So we have this opportunity room that has a lot of moving parts that are phenomenal to help shape behavior of younger children. It's now being integrated into the 5th and 6th grade. And we could show you data on how we've actually reduced the number of discipline referrals.
Exactly.
Based on program
stuff like that.
implementation.
See, I think
that's an example of something that we've implemented that we could come back to you with.
And that's a way to show the board that what we are making decisions on is actually having an impact.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I want to see, because once a year we might get those testing results. Well, you know, one flat piece of data is not necessarily telling us, because we want to know the why. What does the district need to do differently in order to improve that? And I know that's what y'all spend your time asking about, but then you bring stuff to us to vote on, and we don't necessarily know if it ever has an impact or not. So I would just like to see an academic component of each of our meetings. Doesn't have to be majorly long, just something, and we can, you know, change up the way the rest of the agenda looks, and you know, and just break it into small segments and get different reports from different people, just so we feel like we're in touch.
Yeah.
So anyway, be thinking on that, Brian. I'll get with Lloyd and Corey, and you know, come up with some ideas of things you would like to see.
And you know, I will kind of give you some honest feedback on the demand that some of those ideas create, because some things such as, getting you an absenteeism rate is nothing more than a Cognos report through Tracy, and that wouldn't be a very heavy lift, but depending upon other ideas and topics, I'll just let you know, yeah, I think we can do that, we'll definitely try to do that, or I may need 3 months to make sure that can happen,
Right,
you know.
totally understand.
So, the other thing with this topic is I do believe that with us revisiting the mask policy, with us doing the work that we're trying to do, and as we continue to remain in COVID and we've tried to stream meetings for people to engage, I want to seriously consider moving our meetings to probably the cafeteria. Get us into a larger space where people, if they want to come and sit like these people did tonight, they wanted to be heard. We need to be able to facilitate an opportunity. You might say, well, why not the auditorium? We've tried the auditorium a couple of times and it just feels really big.
It does.
To put the board down there and then put 20 people in the audience. I think that if we could, you know, either the elementary side or the high school side of the cafeteria, the high school side of the cafeteria makes the most sense because people could actually just sit in the tables.
Yeah.
Because they're already down.
So saying that,
chairs.
You had 381 comments take place during the meeting, and primarily they were responses to the 4 voices you were hearing in here.
Yeah.
Agreeing or disagreeing with the 4 or 5 voices you were hearing in here.
Right.
So had we been in a setting where those folks thought they could be heard as well,
Correct.
they probably would have been here as well.
Correct.
So.
And it's not going to be often that you have
No.
such hotly debated topics, but you do need to
You're gonna
have.
have it in October.
Yeah, it's going to be back, and you're going to need.
I know.
We're going to need different space,
Yeah, and that's fine.
and we need to get into that space consistently, and plan on staying in that space so that that's our routine.
Yeah.
Everybody knows where they're going. They don't need to be guessing, and we don't need the community guessing where the meeting's going to be.
Yeah. So would you say high school cafeteria?
It's on the high school side.
Yeah, the high
it's
school
one
side.
cafeteria.
Well, I know, but the high school
That
side.
high school side has the
Don't make
tables
us-
that are more for adults.
Yeah, don't make us sit in those little bitty tables for the little people.
What do you think, Hayden? I mean, would that work
I think
without
we're
having a
good.
big, wouldn't be that hard to set it up?
And we would have a
There'll be
room.
a small cost to make all that happen. Wouldn't be too bad. I know
Right.
we'll go with Mr. Freeman, make sure we're not on the high school side, he's on the elementary side for faces.
So is Faces still going on at that time?
Yes,
Yes.
because it goes till 6.
That's right.
Could be a little noisy.
I know we did like our Cobra Chef videos that started at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. They worked with us, they moved, they were next door too. So it's something that they can do. Just need to reach out to Mr. Freeman and see what their schedule's like.
Well, y'all do some more homework on that, and, you know, I don't mind, because there would be space then to have executive session room,
Right.
Right.
so, yeah, I would be okay with that.
So I also listed any additional topics, anything else on the mind of the board that needs to be addressed currently. That was item 3, if we had opportunity for any additional topic. We've covered a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
that some of you are ready to
Oh,
go to the house.
I can't think of anything offhand.
no,
I think we've covered plenty.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a full evening, but it's.
I
been a
hate
good
it
one.
that you weren't here with us, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah.
I hate that too.
But let's just call it a night, and we will ruminate on some of this stuff later.
Okay. All right.
And, yeah, let's, thank you all. If you've stuck with us this long, thanks for being here tonight, and, see you again at the next regularly scheduled meeting on September 13th.